This is Defenders TV Podcast, episode 89, our introduction to Iron Fist in our 5 Things You Need to Know podcast. Talk about brand new. Welcome back to our podcasts all about Iron Fist and the Defenders. We're starting off with our brand new theme tune, courtesy again of the wonderful Mississippi MacDonald. I think he's really outdone himself.
Absolutely. Great little intro there from the Ulster, from Mississippi MacDonald. Just the lovely kind of the monk chants at the start, moving into sort of the screeching subway train coming to the station. A nice way to try and get the depiction of East and West there.
Absolutely.
Gotta say, I love it too. This is probably one of my favorites, but old blind guy DD is still winning. I think it's just more he was the first. He was our first. He was our first intro. You know, there's a special place in my heart. He's also special needs, obviously, with being blind and extrasensory.
He's extrasensory, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I'm just can't wait for Iron Fist to come here.
Absolutely.
Now on the TV. I mean, who'd have thought it that sat here now in my lifetime that I could say that Iron Fist was coming to TV and we've just had Doctor Strange on the cinema.
Absolutely.
Fantastic
absolutely.
for me.
And
great.
Firstly, I do want to say another thank you quickly to Mr. MacDonald. If you want to know more about his music, he is a blues musician who does some great music over on MississippiMacDonald.com. Go see his site. Another quick thank you to all of our listeners who've been subscribing to us for these many years on the Defenders podcasts, all the way through our Daredevil Season 1, Season 2, Jessica Jones, and obviously our Luke Cage podcast, which was our highest rated podcast that we've had. It's had the most downloads. So thanks so much to all of you who've been subscribed and all the brand new listeners who are here for our discussions about Iron Fist. Obviously, we will be going into all 13 episodes, just like we have with all the other podcasts. But we are going to start off with our 101 podcast, our 5 Things You Need to Know About the Defenders podcast. And one of those things, before we get into the 5 things you need to know about Iron Fist, one of those things obviously is who we are. I'm one of your hosts, Derek.
Hi, I'm one of your other hosts, John.
And rounding out the group, I'm your ever-lovable, blue-eyed Chris Jones.
You don't look anything like the Thing, Chris.
Well, thank you. But there's some flaky skin there that kind of, at the moment, I'm telling you, it doesn't look good.
You're a little orange in that light, too.
Yeah.
But yes, that's us. It's been 4 months since we podcasted together. We recorded our final Luke Cage episode back in November, and we're back now in March, 1 week out from Iron Fist coming on Netflix to record our first podcast in this series of podcasts. And the great news is our screener episodes from Netflix have arrived in our inbox. We will be ready to watch them, but as always, listeners, we're not watching ahead, so we haven't seen anything of the new series, but we will be diving into it directly after we finish our Iron Fist podcast.
Absolutely. And for anyone new who's joining, then of course, you're very welcome onto Defenders TV podcast. If you want to subscribe, leave a review, download the podcast, you can go to www.defenderstvpodcast.com/iTunes, or you can search Defenders TV Podcast, obviously, on any other good podcast catcher. And of course, we have our Facebook group over at Defenders TV Podcast. Just search that on Facebook, and our Twitter handle at DefendersCast.
Loads and loads of ways to follow us. But Absolutely. If you want to get involved in the show as well, as you watch the episodes, we'll be recording them a little bit out of step. You'll get your first episode of Iron Fist on March 17th, directly after the show is airing on Netflix worldwide. But if you want to get involved and want to tell us your thoughts as you go, email us over at feedback@defenderstvpodcast.com, or go to the website defenderstvpodcast.com, record your thoughts. You can leave up to a 90-second clip and we'll play it on the episodes. But our first episode, we know definitely won't have any feedback because nobody will have watched it. Excitingly.
Excitingly indeed.
Yeah.
That's the great thing about it all dropping at once, is that the one thing you do know is that everyone is watching it.
Yeah.
That is either listening to the podcast or just in their spare time.
Exactly. It's really cool, isn't it? I really like the way Netflix do it. We all know when it's coming out and we're all looking forward to it as well. So I think it's time to get into our main body of our podcast. Guys, are you happy, Chris?
Oh, bring it on.
Excellent. So, quick round the table. What are our experiences of Iron Fist? I'll start off because I have probably got the least knowledge of Iron Fist. I have read The Immortal Iron Fist, one of the great runs of the comic books, which we'll probably talk about a bit later on. And really, I've read a lot of the appearances of Iron Fist within his time with Luke Cage during the 70s. I was a huge Kung Fu fan in the 70s, but weirdly, I didn't go for comic books as my Kung Fu source. I went to movies, obviously. I went to the wonderful movies of Bruce Lee. I went to see pretty much every type of that movie, but it never translated to comic books for me, for some reason.
Yeah, that's weird.
Yeah.
You are.
We're just
weird.
calling you weird.
Yeah,
basically.
we're just calling you weird, basically.
Yeah.
I know, because I do read comic books for almost everything else, but back in those days, I was...
But you were still a spy in those days. You were in blue tights, nylon, presumably, white boots, and an eye patch.
Yes.
And with grey hair, even at that young, tender age. Playing, obviously, Nicholas Fury.
Yes.
Director of S.H.I.E.L.D., Agent of S.H.I.E.L.D., traitor, spy, espionage.
Yes, but there was the
Hail
occasional...
Hydra.
There was the occasional crossover. There was... you did see Danny Rand appear in many comic books that I read over the years, but I wasn't a huge fan of him at the time. Didn't read a huge amount of him. I read a lot of Shang-Chi, weirdly, who's involved in the character as well. But Chris, what about you? What's your experience of Iron Fist?
Yeah, I'm kind of a middle of the road man at this. Predominantly, I know him from his kind of New York hangout. So, following and growing up a lot on Spidey, having some Avengers kind of cut through, he'd pop up quite a lot. Mm-hmm. I love the Immortal Iron Fist run. That would probably be my go-to source material for him, because it does explain or re-explain some of his origin stories. So it's great. But yeah, no, I was always slightly put off by the original 70s outfit with the really long collar.
Well, the picky nose.
Yeah, and then just this massive deep V, like almost extra hipster. It just went, I can have deep V down to my belly button.
Oh, yeah.
Are you trying to say that he was the inspiration for Borat's Mankini?
It could be. It could be. If Borat put on and put the sigil of the Iron Fist on his, that could be the truth. But no, more. I had a lot of experience with him and Spidey, and obviously Luke Cage. And then I kind of started coming around to him a bit more when. This, I don't know if this is spoilery or not for the TV show, but there was a large arc in Daredevil where Danny Rand took over the place of Matt Murdock.
Mm-hmm. Certainly did,
and that was kind of one of my deeper introductions to him, because based on that, then I came to our other host John and begged for some more areas where I can dive into this character. But then that actually brings us on to John. John, you are he's one of your favorite characters. Please introduce us.
Oh, absolutely. Like, he's my second favorite character after Doctor Strange. Obviously, the mystical mumbo jumbo that connects the two of them, so to speak. It's a character that I love. The same associations as with Doctor Strange. And I kind of originally came to the character because of those kind of connections. I was just looking around for other people in the Marvel Universe that had that kind of mystical, magical quality. Now, like, Danny Rand's got obviously martial arts skills as well, and I came across him and I just kind of reading some of his books. It's kind of, I got to know Luke Cage through Heroes for Hire.
Yeah.
But I mean, completely with you. I think the Immortal Iron Fist is really good. I mean, we'll obviously come to some of these recommendations anyway, as a place to start. I think Iron Fist the Living Weapon is really good as well. But really, I loved the background of it. I loved the whole mystical element, that came from Kun Lum. And I suppose that kind of probably can lead me into sort of his origin, in terms of that he first appeared in Marvel Premiere issue 15 back in the 70s. Another
right.
child of the 70s,
Just like
1974. I think it was, a couple of years after Luke Cage had come into the Marvel universe, and but he was created by Roy Thomas and Gil Kane. So that's his first kind of main appearance in the Marvel comics back in the 70s.
Yeah. I know they created the character of Luke Cage, as we talked about on our Luke Cage 101 and throughout the show, that it was really because blaxploitation was becoming a very popular or very widespread form of cinema in the 70s. And as I mentioned earlier on, Bruce Lee was becoming very popular in American cinemas in the 70s, particularly in New York. And they created this character really to harness that. And Marvel was so good in the 70s at tapping into an audience that was looking at things in the cinema, or looking at things on TV, and gathering them towards comic books. So that's obviously where Iron Fist came from. He did come from the kung fu explosion that was also going on in America at the time.
Absolutely. I think for me as well, like before obviously really getting to know about Moon Knight as well, I think for me it had that element of Batman for me as well, because of the billionaire mom and dad, and I suppose this is ultimately bringing me round to the origin, but it had similarities with Batman to an extent, where he's training somewhere else, but obviously it goes almost down the Ra's al Ghul kind of avenue of mysticism and magic, and those ancient techniques, rather than necessarily the technology that you had with Batman. But I like the similarities there, and this is obviously Moon Knight within the Marvel universe is more akin to the Bruce Wayne kind of character. Has been cited as such, but I think before I knew about Moon Knight, certainly it was that similarity to Batman as well for me with the Danny Rand character,
right? Yeah,
which I kind of latched onto.
And I think one of the points you're touching on, and one of the best parts of the character before you go into the origin, is where tragedy struck Batman and he kind of internalized it. He becomes this dark, brooding character, and he becomes vengeance. The one element I loved about Danny Rand and Iron Fist throughout his kind of comic book series is that chirpiness is probably the wrong word, but the levity and the humor that does come through, especially when it's heroes for hire. Him and Luke Cage, it's best buddies. They crack jokes while they kick ass.
Yeah. I like the fact that it really annoys Luke Cage with his jolliness or happiness all the time.
Absolutely. He's not weighed down like Bruce Wayne is by the events that have unfolded. I mean, some of the comic arcs go a bit darker and a bit more deeper into that, but certainly I completely agree. I mean, that's the thing that certainly distinguishes him from that kind of similarity, is the fact that ultimately he's also he has a funniness to him and a chirpiness, as you say, Chris, almost a bit like Spider-Man in that sense.
Exactly.
That one-off liner, that throwaway remark during the heat of battle in the tight situation, and I think as well I kind of like that interplay the few times that him and Doctor Strange have been together in comics as well. I think that they really work together well, in the same way I think that Spider-Man and Doctor Strange always kind of seem to have that gel together, and it's because of the differences. They kind of opposites kind of attract,
Absolutely.
so to speak. You get the yin and the yang to take it one step further of the two differences in the characters. Totally agree.
Yeah, that's kind of our experiences with it and where he came from as a character. We're going to go into the origin story. John generally does our synopsis for each of our episodes as we go through the podcast. So John's going to take the origin story of Iron Fist. If you don't want to know the origin story, because this is very possible that there's going to be spoilers in here for the TV show. As we said, we haven't watched it. We have seen the trailers, so we know that it does use a bit of the origin story in there. So we're not going to spoil a huge amount. But if you want to skip ahead and skip the origin, just fast forward a bit. And John is going to take us on with the the origin of Danny Rand into the Iron Fist.
Yeah, no, this definitely could be spoilery, certainly. And, of course, as I've just mentioned about the Wayne connection and the Batman connection, you will be unsurprised to hear that both his mother and father die, but not at the hands of possibly the Joker, but or the Red Hood or some other person.
Joe Chill.
Or Joe Chill. Yeah, that's true. That's true. When Danny is a young boy, his father, who's Wendell Rand, who's married to Heather Duncan, or Heather Rand, as she becomes, they go out on an expedition to Kunlun, because as a young boy himself, Wendell had come across this city, and now he goes back with his business partner as well, Harold Meacham, who we know is going to be in the show as well, to go back to Kunlun, but they're involved in an accident, and Danny is on board as well. He's a young kid who's been born and brought up in New York and is on this trip to seek out one of the heavenly cities, Kunlun. And this is really where it all happens. This is where all the origin comes from. During this journey, Wendell is killed, plunging to his death, and his mother, in an act of self-sacrifice, defends Danny from a pack of wolves and throws herself at them. Mm-hmm. Ultimately, he's saved by the monks of Kunlun, and he's adopted into this mystical city. Now, forgive any of my pronunciations of this, but UT, who is the main kind of ruler, is a hooded ruler of this mystical city of Kunlun. Effectively, brings him up and teaches him, is like the apprentice, the master, and teaches Danny Rand the arts of mysticism and the martial arts in particular, because Daniel is expressing that desire for vengeance on presumably Meacham, here in this. And so he apprentices him to Lee Kung, the Thunderer, who ultimately teaches him all of this stuff.
This is one of the most exciting things about the TV show coming out.
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see how they kind of deal with this origin story. I mean, obviously in some of the trailers and teasers that we've seen of this, we've seen him in the snow, we've seen some monks. So this is going to sort of, this is going to whip a lot of people out of New York City for a moment, even probably if it's done in flashback. And of course, you're bringing in that mystical element, the martial art aspect to it as well.
I actually just meant how interesting it's going to be to hear these things pronounced correctly according to Marvel. That's going to be great fun.
That is true. I'm butchering names here. Effectively, Danny grows up in this city, and he's given a chance to attain ultimately the power of the Iron Fist, and this is almost like a resurrection of the mantle of the Iron Fist, and this is obtained by defeating the dragon Shaolao the Undying, who effectively guards the molten heart that has been torn from his body and which holds the chi power, the power that fuels the Iron Fist. Daniel is very clever here, and I suppose that's one of the other things. He's got that intelligence about him as well, and he defeats the Undying, who is undying no more because he's dead. In the process, then the dragon tattoo that we see on Danny Rand's chest is kind of burnt into his chest from the dragon, and he enters into the molten heart and emerges with this power of the Iron Fist.
That's very cool.
It really is. And I mean,
can I just say, we've gone through three series of Defenders on Netflix, and most of the origin stories have been reasonably hidden, I suppose. Luke Cage's one was kind of kept till later on in the episodes, and it was an experiment that went wrong. Jessica Jones, an accident that we haven't really seen what caused it. Matt Murdock had a quick moment in the beginning of an episode saying, well, this is how he got his powers. This is a dragon.
Exactly.
This is a battle between a dragon where he kills it and takes its heart, and therefore takes the power of the chi and the power of the Iron Fist. That's pretty cool and very different for Netflix.
I presume we're going to see a dragon.
That's great.
And I really hope so. I really hope so. I also hope we'll see a pack of wolves as well.
Maybe.
But yeah, who knows?
Yeah.
We do just need to wait for that.
That's very true.
But
do you think the dragon's going to look like the one from How to Train Your Dragon? The really cute one with the big eyes.
I suspect not.
I might go more Game of Thrones.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I think so.
Lord of the Rings, Hobbit kind of style.
So it won't look like our official podcast, Charlie?
No.
Okay.
But as I was saying about this kind of resurrection of the Iron Fist, it's revealed, in particular through the Immortal Iron Fist series by Matt Faction, that, that Daniel Rand, Danny, is part of like a long line of Iron Fists that have come before him. And actually, one of the great things about in the Immortal Iron Fist, it's a whole range of different people at different times in history that have been imbued with this power and who are fighting for justice and helping other people. That's just really a huge part of this, is that there's a huge tradition that's kind of passed down in the mythos of Iron Fist.
It's really cool,
but ultimately then when Kunlun, the Heavenly City, it reappears, it's on a cycle. There's another, I think about 5 or 6 Heavenly Cities as well, with different people in them, like the Iron Fist, with different powers, different abilities, but it reappears on Earth after 10 years. It's like this cyclic passage of the Heavenly City that Danny comes back to find his father's killer and returns to New York, where he then ultimately seeks out Harold Meacham, who is now, in the comics at least, is the head of Meacham Industries. But we, I think, see him there involved in Rand Corporation.
Yeah, very interesting. Yeah, so, I kind of think of this idea of the Kunlun disappearing and reappearing every 10 years. I kind of think of that as similar to what they explored in Thor and Thor: The Dark World, where they had the different realms appearing over Earth at specific times, and once every century, I think it was, that they aligned,
exactly,
wasn't it?
Yeah.
Whereas Kunlun,
in Thor 2,
The Dark World. So in this case, Kunlun disappears from the Earth for 10 years. That's where Danny's been training for this entire time, and then he returns to Earth to seek out his father's killer. So there is some precedence for this in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, anyway.
Yeah.
Okay, I've got 2 questions based out of this, right? And it's more open ended, and I think obviously we're gonna find out pretty soon.
In about 25 minutes, Chris.
Yeah, exactly. Hopefully, fingers crossed. With an origin story like this, as you said, this is probably one of the most, let's say, out there origin stories for the Defenders, for the Marvel Netflix universe. Okay?
Yeah.
How are they going to treat this?
I know.
So, you were thinking flashbacks, but as soon as you start, like you can't put this whole origin story almost in, like, okay, first 15 minutes of episode 2 or 1, kind of like this, ram all this together, because there's a lot of detail here.
Absolutely.
So I'm really interested to see how the director and the showrunner will tease this out, so giving the audience enough information but not scaring them off in the first 2 episodes by introducing magic and dragons and chi and like heavenly cities with the other realms. Every other show, so Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and say the Marvel Cinematic Universe, they've had a swath of films to build this lore. And with this, we've got 13 episodes, pretty standalone, as with all of them, and you got, let's say, 2 to 4 episodes to entice them enough, but also give the viewers like us enough that we're going, okay, let's bring it on.
Yeah.
So let's see what you guys think about how are they going to do this.
I think if you're just coming into Iron Fist immediately, it might come as a shock. I think if you've seen Daredevil, then you'll know, and you'll hopefully have seen that Madame Gao is in this. There has been that introduction to some extent, not obviously as deep as going into Kunlun and the whole traditions of the Iron Fist and him killing a dragon, but there's at least a layer of recognizability there, you know, of familiarity within New York, and even just with Daredevil 2, that effectively you've got the Hand coming, and you've got that whole idea of reincarnation to some extent through the Big Urn. So there's some themes I think that hopefully should, you know, allow some lead-in to showing this. I presume they're going to show it. I'm not entirely sure. That there's certainly going to be some aspect of this. I would agree with you, though. I hope they don't just plonk it to get it over and done with, because it maybe feels like it could disconnect from being in modern day New York. I hope they kind of, in whatever way they choose to do at the opportune moment, just really, you know, go into that aspect of the storyline. But I do hope that the flashback isn't too flashbacky, if you want, because
I love your new words.
Because I do think, you know, it's a big moment when he loses his mum. And that's ultimately where, you know, that's what drives him whilst he is at Kunlun. Because of her sacrifice. And because of obviously the evil machinations of Harold Meacham. So I hope they give the flashbacks, if they are flashbacks even, some time to at least get that sense of why actually he stayed away from where he was born and where he was brought up initially in New York, why he's come back now.
Yeah, no, I think that makes sense. I think the thing they're going to do, personally, my view is we'll get the death scene quite early. We'll get the odd flashback here and there, and then quite similar to Luke Cage, we'll have pretty much a single episode dedicated to, now let's say 6, 7, 8, somewhere around that. We'll get one of those more dedicated episodes where we've had enough exposition, we've had enough storyline that, okay, it's set in modern day New York, and then it's like, but yeah, we've introduced a guy with a magical hand, so we're going to tell you about that. And then has that flashback where he does fight the spirit of the dragon and explains all of it. Because this is my one fear. Very like Doctor Strange, even though Doctor Strange was amazing.
Can I do my Gollum impression? I'm not listening.
No, I just think you're introducing something that is quite unique for taking the step away. We're going to watch this, whatever.
Yeah.
When you're trying to market this and build a story for the wider Netflix audience, the wider comic book audience, the wider audience in general, similar to Doctor Strange, you've got... It's a hard sell when you start talking magic and everything like that.
I will definitely say this is the most niche of the Netflix shows.
Definitely.
I've loved it so far. We had Daredevil, which was advertised as a dark and gritty Marvel TV show, but it's still a Marvel TV show. You had Jessica Jones, which was marketed as, well, we've got a female protagonist and how she deals with the mental abuse that is given to her. So an abuse story, really good female-led Marvel abuse story. Then you had the Luke Cage one, which was marketed as, this is all about the music, this is all about Harlem as another character, this is all about black culture in America and what's going on now. And then you've got Iron Fist, which is advertised as, this is the one with the dragon and the magic hand.
Well,
so difficult as a show.
But
it always has to happen.
Difficult to sell.
They've been talking about it for a long time, and they've been working on it for a long time. I'm really excited to see what they give us. But I'm sure it was the marketeers were going, how do we say that this is set in the same city? We haven't seen anything in the promotional material about dragons. They didn't do the same thing as Doctor Strange did, where they went, this is a brand new world for Marvel. You've never seen anything like this before. They have been going down the path of, this is another hero in the city of New York. This time it's in the Upper East Side and the business area. So they're definitely playing up that side of it.
I mean, I do think ultimately they are going to focus on the New York side of it. And I mean, if you start to go down that route, then man with, you know, special hands... But then, you know, a blind man that can do all the acrobatics.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's actually no different from Luke Cage, from Jessica Jones in terms of the powers and how they got them. Because remember, when we did actually discuss Daredevil, and I think in particular with Jessica Jones, because she either did big hop, skip, and jump, or she flew. Then
flew
jump.
Then we said they're actually going down that route. Yeah. We weren't even really expecting it for Jessica Jones. Mm-hmm. But I think if you forget Kunlun, if you forget Shou-Lao, if you forget all that background origin for one moment, then it's actually no different. And I think obviously how they choose to incorporate that, they must have to, and obviously are linking it through Madame Gao. Right. I mean, in the trailer, we have seen Meacham and Madame Gao together. So it is through that. It is coming through the themes of the Hand, and ultimately to the Defenders, that there's this existential threat to New York City from something that they feel they don't understand. This is the guy who is from that world, who is also a good guy.
Absolutely, and that kind of brings us on. We've done our points about what we know about the character and the origin. John, his powers. So we've kind of talked about the powers and talked around them. Do you want to talk about some of the powers that we've seen in the comic books that he used?
Well, I mean, ultimately it's the chi. It's the Iron Fist power. It's, coming from the slain dragon's superhuman energy, and it's been pulled into Rand, and it's obviously made manifest by the dragon burnt into his chest.
Yeah, and it is true. Again, not a tattoo. He didn't just go down to his local tattoo artist and get him to draw this awesome looking dragon on him. This is burnt into his chest. This is a burn.
This is a burn.
Very cool.
This is a burn. And ultimately, that's where he gets his chi, which helps him, in terms of healing, in terms of his stamina, his strength, his speed, his acrobatics. Plus, he's been skilled in martial arts at Kunlun. He's basically an all-round bad dude with a really, really fierce punch.
Yeah, absolutely. Very cool.
And there, in a nutshell, are his powers.
Right. It is really interesting because obviously for years I've heard of Tai Chi, and that's the one where people stand and move very slowly.
Yeah, but that's relaxing. A martial art.
But it is a martial art.
And if you speed it up, because I used to do it, then it's hugely effective. Yes, you do it slowly in Tai Chi because it's relaxing and so on, but it's not designed as a relaxing thing. It's slowly so you know the moves. But if you speed that move up, it's just as deadly as any other martial art.
Iron Fist.
Yeah, and as any other martial art, because it's about movement, it's about centering, so it's about balance, poise, and movement around that. And if you start to speed it up, then you're a kick-ass Tai Chi dude.
It sounded kind of
not like me,
like a threat from John there.
just slightly. I'm glad I'm not in the room. But okay, so this leads me to my second question. Okay, which I was going to ask. So we've seen a glimpse in the trailers of the Iron Fist, the chi pouring into his fist and smashing down a large door, or two large doors in this case now, actually, after the second trailer. He's good at smashing doors.
Or making his own doors. I think one of them is a
making
wall.
His own doors. I came into this before watching the trailer. I assumed that the power of the chi and other powers throughout this universe, especially with some of his allies, which we'll get to, this was going to be very much explained via the Doctor Strange, which was going to be symbols and patterns and changing the physics, and around that way of explaining how magic works and chi works. That does not look to be the case. It seems like he has just managed to make his skin glow to a degree. You can imagine this is going to be brilliant. Like, what you're trying to explain to someone is, so his healing factor, for example, how are they going to really show that without having a cut and then the cut glowing and then disappearing, and then there's no cut where there was a cut before.
Why would they need to show it without, Chris? That's exactly the way they got to show it. Yeah, they've been really lucky with the fact that that Logan just came out in the cinema, which we haven't covered on the podcast yet. We may get to cover it before the show starts. But Logan is a character that's been around for 13 years and has had the healing factor, and the only way they've ever been able to show it is the fact he gets a cut and it re-heals. So they will absolutely, if they do incorporate the healing factor of the chi, I'm certain they're going to show it as him healing in the same way as his hand glows. It will show the cuts healing with that yellow glow around it because it's pulling from his chi. It's the only way you can describe the connection between the two in my eyes. But I have been proven wrong before many times on this podcast.
Yeah, and I mean, I think with Danny Rand, that power is internalized within him. So it's almost like he contains it. Doctor Strange, it's projecting the power and using the force to alternate the reality.
The force,
yeah,
the midichlorians,
the life force,
right.
The life force to affect that kind of the magic in reality. Mm-hmm. This is contained within him. This is an internal thing. As such, he doesn't as such practice magical arts. He is imbued with a magical power that he kind of contains and controls in that sense, but it's internal, out of which we really see it manifest with his glowing fist. We did also see he's good at punching down doors now. He can rip a taxi door off its hinges as well if he's in a bad mood.
Oh, okay. I missed that one.
No, I'm joking.
Oh.
No. But no, we did see him punch the ground, so it's almost like a shockwave within the office. Yeah, presumably at Rand Corp.
The big moment in the trailer when he's being attacked.
Or Rand Enterprise as it is, isn't it? I keep saying Rand Corp.
I know.
So, okay, this is where I get a bit... His power is contained within him. Does he have one iron fist, or does he have iron fists? Could he have an iron foot?
No, he has the power of the iron fist.
Well, no, if you start thinking about this, I'm like, is it just drawn into his right fist? Or can he channel it to his left fist? Could he channel it to an iron kick?
Okay, it's normally obviously shown just through his fist, but he also shows bringing both his fists together. It's not just one of his fists or hands that can contain it. I mean, some of the comics you do see him utilizing both, and sometimes that's to generate additional power. So depending on the enemy that he's facing, he needs to call upon more of the power and the force within him to create a bigger effect with the chi.
Okay, interesting.
I'm trying to think whether they've ever done anything with his foot or anything, but I don't think so. But it is kind of that he kind of uses both. But I think this is just where it manifests, and of course, like, he can lose that power as well. It's also that notion that it can be, lost. He can lose this because of this kind of cyclical resurrection of this power through differing iron fists.
So that's a perfect segue. When he loses his powers, who are his friends to help him out?
Exactly.
Absolutely. Yeah, very good, Chris.
Exactly.
Well, obviously, his first and biggest friend and biggest compatriot really is Luke Cage. That's kind of the one that we know him best as a partner of. The two of them joined together very quickly after the comic book started, about 2 years into the Iron Fist run. Comic book sadly wasn't doing very well in the early 70s, and unfortunately Luke Cage, the comic book, wasn't doing very well. Blaxploitation had kind of moved on, as we mentioned in the Luke Cage 101 podcast. Had also the Kung Fu explosion that was going on in cinemas had also moved on a bit. So they merged the two characters together. They pulled them together because both of them had some adventures in the past and created Heroes for Hire, the book that relaunched both characters into the kind of minds of the 70s, and it was a great moment. We've talked a ton about Luke Cage, obviously, in all of our episodes about the Netflix series. We've talked a ton about him, but I'm really intrigued to see these two characters together.
Yeah, me too.
I'm still hoping there's going to be a moment within the 13 episodes where we see Luke Cage appear. They have given a very good reason why we probably won't see Luke Cage in the show. If you haven't seen the episodes of Luke Cage, watch them before Defenders. So I'm not going to spoil them here. But we will hopefully see the two of them. We know the two of them are going to be working together in the Defenders. So that's going to be a great moment, seeing those two big characters together.
Absolutely. Of course, there was the rumour as well that another big character might somehow show up. I suspect not, but I'm still hoping for a amazing surprise at some point. But obviously, Doctor Strange is one of his allies as well, primarily through the fact that Iron Fist was a defender with Doctor Strange and also She-Hulk, Silver Surfer, and Namor in the new Defenders series that was there in 2011.
Nice.
And again by Matt Fraction. So he obviously has a thing for this character. Of course, within the new Avengers, and Luke Cage is there as well with them. So that's an interesting little triangle there going on. But there's a big mystical interference with the Iron Fist, and I think to do with the immortal weapons as well. After Doctor Strange realizes then that the Iron Fist is now an immortal weapon of Agamotto, so he is like kick-ass.
Wow, after 5 podcasts about Summer of Strange that we did last year, you're still calling it Agamotto.
Yeah. Agamotto.
We need to watch the movie again, John.
I know. Well, it's out, isn't it, this week?
It is.
So, perfect.
Yes, there is a small connection with Doctor Strange. Of course, John was going to pull that out.
Of course I
Unfortunately,
was.
Danny has probably worked with Nick Fury a few times, but there's no specific connection with him. He does have a big connection with Daredevil. Chris, do you want to give a little rundown of what that connection is?
Yep. So these guys not growing up in Hell's Kitchen. The larger part of Manhattan has always been looked after by these two, especially with DD in Hell's Kitchen, and they've crossed paths quite a lot. One of the biggest ones was where there was a long story arc where Matt Murdock is imprisoned, and because of this, there is no Daredevil. And how that is rectified to a degree is that Iron Fist takes on the mantle of Daredevil. It was a good 12, 15 issue arc, if I'm right.
It was a long run.
It was a long run.
I do remember there was a bit of mystery around who it was that was running around the city as Daredevil at the time, which was quite cool and a really good storyline, and a great way to protect the secret identity of Daredevil, to have somebody else playing the part for a while. It was quite cool.
Yeah, and what this does mean is quite in a nice way is that we do know that even though Danny Rand is one of his specific powers is not agility, if you want to call it that, in the supersonic, the super hearing, like in the balance, he doesn't have that, but he still has the ability to almost embody that to a degree. He can still swing, he can still jump. He has a slight ability there, which we assume is a byproduct of the chi.
Yeah.
Because everything, if we can't explain it, it's the chi.
Yeah, absolutely. And he looks good in red.
Absolutely. Always.
That is true.
Always. He didn't turn to the yellow suit, like connected with his.
He can rock red and green.
Excellent. Along with those compatriots, there was also Shang-Chi in the comic books. He worked with them quite a lot. Another one of the kung fu stars of the 70s, very like Bruce Lee. Basically, Shang-Chi was the equivalent of Bruce Lee in the comic books. But he also has the ladies of the Heroes for Hire, or from the group that he works with, probably most often working with Colleen Wing, who we know is very central to the Iron Fist TV show, played by Jessica Henwick. Really looking forward to seeing her character. Her trailers have looked fantastic so far. A proper fighter. Really looking forward to seeing her in the show. And Misty Knight, who we know was from the Luke Cage TV show. She was actually Danny's girlfriend for quite a long time. There was a big relationship between the two of them. We've seen Luke Cage already have a relationship with Misty Knight. Do you think we'll have that big relationship between Danny Rand and Misty Knight? Because it's a big storyline. It's as big as Luke Cage and Jessica Jones.
I really hope so, actually, because I mean, ultimately, Luke Cage was really going after Night Nurse, though.
Yeah,
really,
absolutely.
By the end of it, but he started off trying to hit up on Misty Knight. So
he just wanted coffee with anyone, really.
Absolutely.
He does like coffee.
He does like coffee.
He doesn't drink coffee.
But I really hope that Misty kind of and Danny hit it off, because I'd love to see the reaction of Luke Cage, or maybe even that, Luke Cage and Misty Knight do have a thing, and in comes this young, much lighter, buzzier, chirpier pretender, and obviously Misty falls for his humour.
I think I like the idea that you mentioned earlier on, that it's one of the things that brings Danny Rand out as a character are the people that surround him. The kind of the opposites attract of himself and Luke. They're very different characters, but work really well together. Misty and himself couldn't be more different. Like, they are very different kind of characters. She's a hard-bitten cop who's gone through a terrible experience here, as we saw throughout Luke Cage. He's obviously gone through a bad experience, but he's now 10 years on and has learned to manage his anger and aggression into being the Iron Fist. So they'll be very different characters, but I would love to see the interplay between the two of them. I'm really hoping that we're going to see a bit of that in the show.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think as well, obviously, not only was Iron Fist one of the heroes for hire, he's obviously been in a Defender, he's also been in the New Avengers, but he is also one of the immortal weapons from from one of the legendary cities of heaven, but including with that, and sometimes they fight one another. I think in the Immortal Iron Fist, they have a big kind of in an arena to fight, but they have to. I think they have to fight is Davos, I think. Oh. But anyway, there's Dog Brother, there's Bride of Nine Spiders, Fat Cobra, Prince of Orphans, and Tiger's Beautiful Daughter. What fantastic names.
Yeah. Is that her actual
name? Great
name?
names.
That was a great way. If you ever have kids, what a great way to name your child. You are my beautiful daughter.
Yeah, better than Apple.
That's true. That's true. So that's some of the major allies that we see in the comic books. There's obviously going to be some very different ones on the show. We're kind of running out of time. We've only got to point 4, but our 5th point is our final major point, obviously. And we've talked about the allies, the antagonists, the major characters that make life difficult for Danny Rand. Obviously, it's not all wonderful. I've learnt chi and I've learnt martial arts, although my notes say marital arts by mistake there. Martial arts. There are some people that antagonize the character. John, give us a quick run over. You mentioned Davos, one of the major characters.
Well, there's the Davos, or the Steel Serpent, and as I said, we've seen this symbol previously in Daredevil on the drug shipments. But Davos effectively has attempted many times to kill Danny Rand and the Iron Fist by absorbing the power of Shao-Lao that's contained within him.
Cool.
Speaking of Shao-Lao as well, the dragon, Shao-Lao the Undying, he is an antagonist.
Of course,
obviously
pretty antagonistic.
Pretty Undying wants the successful Iron Fist has got him, but remember all those pretenders that have gone before him who ultimately have been snotted by the dragon. And then, of course, we have the mystic ruler of one of the cities of heaven, Mother Crane.
Chris, I think we know Mother Crane from some of our previous TV shows that we covered, don't we?
I have no idea what you're talking about, but I'm going to take a wild guess. Yes. So we had large discussions on this back in season 1 of Daredevil and our coverage there. Did. So without giving away too many spoilers, if you haven't watched season 1 of Daredevil, but I'm kind of thinking that there's been a fair amount of time, so you should have. Or if not, what are you doing here? I'm only messing. I apologize. We love you all. But no. So Mother Crane is, as John said, the ruler of one of the legendary cities of heaven, and Kung Unzi. I'm going to say that they have their own logo, and this was the links to the serpent, and this symbol was seen quite a lot in Daredevil season 1.
Absolutely,
but in particular, the Mother Crane, we didn't see anyone called Mother Crane. We saw a particular lady called Madame Gao.
Yes, we did.
We have been confirmed, and she's in the trailer. Mm-hmm. So there's no real spoilers there. She is in this episode. Yeah. So we speculated quite a lot that this is Mother Crane, or the MCU Netflix version of Mother Crane, and I think our bets are almost paying off.
Definitely.
Because if she isn't Mother Crane, this has been one huge. Look over here, my right hand. Actually, no, my left hand's doing something else.
Oh, another gigantic hand. Yes, we did see it the last time we saw Madame Gao on the show. I believe she was going off on her journey to a very distant land that was further away than China.
Yes.
That was how she described it. So that was our first kind of mention of the of what we think was the legendary cities of heaven. So,
yeah, and linked to Davos as well. So there's also then the Qilin, who basically is, ultimately is the big bad for the Iron Fist, because the Qilin is always trying to destroy and kill the Iron Fist whenever they reach 33.
Yeah.
To reclaim, obviously, again, this life force. It's kind of like this, utopia, this tree of life aspect, and that's why they're all after it. And you have then Zhu Sheng as well, then one of the servants of Qilin, who, I think there was speculation as to, are we going to see Zhu Sheng or Davos, Mother Crane in Iron Fist on Netflix. So it'll be interesting to see if any of these make it there. I mean, I'm with Chris here. I really hope Madame Gao is Mother Crane. It'd be great to see Davos.
I think we're going to see that. I think without confirming it, they may not call her Mother Crane. There may be some crane art in the background when she's walking around
Carrying a baby.
Yeah, exactly. It's just a crane and a baby. That's it. There's like, oh my god, it makes
Put
sense.
it together yourselves, people. Yeah.
But I think what we'll end up seeing is Davos is her lieutenant in this, and he'll be branded with the Steel Serpent too. That's where she got the idea for the symbol, and I think that's how we're going to end up seeing it. He'll be introduced. If he is not the antagonist, he may be the antagonist halfway through. So we may end up seeing that Davos is one. This will work either way. Davos and Mother Crane. One will be the Cottonmouth of this, and the other will be the ever lovable Diamondback. We'll end up seeing a part 1 and a part 2. One will be taken down first, the other will be taken down second.
Yeah. Although we have seen Madame Gao fight against Daredevil, and she can kick ass.
That she can.
Yeah,
she is tough.
Absolutely. Well, that is our top 5 points that you need to know about Iron Fist. Hope you've enjoyed listening to the podcast overall and our top 5 points. I think a couple of key series recommendations, like we do on all of our 101 podcasts.
Absolutely, yeah.
Kind of in the notes section may also be point number 6. We're not really too sure.
We'll call it notes. We're calling it
notes, yeah.
Grant. So I think we've mentioned about 100 times. If you haven't read The Immortal Iron Fist and you're heading into the show, I'd highly recommend going out and picking this up. This really does bring to the fore some really cool concepts about Iron Fist. The fact that he isn't the only Iron Fist. There have been other ones in the past. There's some great ideas in here, which allow you to explore the deep mythology that's being created, and written by Matt Fraction and Ed Brubaker, two of my favorite comic book writers as well. So,
absolutely.
So really, really enjoyed that one.
There's also then Power Man and Iron Fist as well.
Absolutely.
Those series. If you want to go for a story that's a bit more dark, more of the tortured soul of Danny Rand, then you have Iron Fist: The Living Weapon as well.
That's a really interesting one, actually. Yeah, I remember you recommended that to me before. Chris?
So there's one of the best ones, which is, and it's still one of my favorites, we've talked about it previously, it's Civil War, that whole arc. Iron Fist goes on the run. He does not agree with the Superhuman Registration Act or the Soviet Accords, depending on which universe you want to talk about. So he goes on the run with Cap and Daredevil, etc. One of the big ones, there's many Spider-Man Iron Fist crossovers. There is the Spider Island, Spider-Verse crossovers. So they would be some of the newer ones, which I would kind of think would bring a more new taste of what Iron Fist is now. But yeah, that would be one of the big ones.
Excellent.
Yeah, and of course you've always got like a lot of the early runs in compiled within the Essential series as well. So there's always the Essential Iron Fist. They will generally have a lot of the earlier comic issues with Iron Fist. So they can be pretty useful to get a background for the character as well. Although maybe sometimes the storylines just don't necessarily resonate like they did back in 1974.
There is some fantastic, cool 70s stories.
But the art is always amazing. And again, if you love pick your nose collars like Chris does.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. With a deep plunging neckline right down to beyond the belly button, then it's some really good art. And some interesting storylines, and maybe some shocking revelations of misogyny and other aspects that you would be shocked to see in a comic book these days. But nonetheless, they are there in print. Mm-hmm. And then we have New Avengers as well, which comes after Civil War, and we have here Luke Cage and Iron Fist being part of the New Avengers, housed in the cozy, snug Sanctum Sanctorum. So, yeah, again, another really sort of good ensemble comic book there with Iron Fist in the storylines. So, really good.
And coming up later this year, we do have the Defenders comic book, where all 4 of our Netflix Defenders are joining together as Defenders in comic series. So I'm really looking forward to that one as well. I think that closes out pretty much everything we can possibly tell you without spoiling too much before Iron Fist comes out next week. I'm really excited for it.
Absolutely, can't wait.
I want to say a huge thank you to both Chris and John for chatting all the way through Iron Fist for me as the slightly less knowledgeable person on the team on Iron Fist. So that's given me a little bit of excitement for watching episode 1 of Iron Fist. I hope you've enjoyed it too, listeners. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for joining us and listening to us. And of course, please subscribe, review, join any of the platforms that we're on, whether it be iTunes, any other good podcast catcher, Facebook or Twitter. Always just search Defenders TV Podcast and up will pop, and we can be supplying lovely soothing sounds into your lobes.
And of course, if you actually want to contact us and give us your feedback on every episode or what you thought of this top 5 rundown things you need to know. Did we miss something? Should we have explored something else? You can always get feedback at defenderstvpodcast.com, or actually, if you want to hear your own docile tones on the podcast with us, then you can go over to our website and leave a 30-second voicemail for us, and with that we'll be able to pop you right back in to the next episodes. But of course, if, as John mentioned, over on Facebook, Defenders TV Podcast, the group we have there, there's hundreds of, there's a few of us. We're on there, obviously, but there are also other listeners where we come in, we discuss. Don't worry, we usually are quite clear about spoilers, so you won't get spoiled if you haven't watched ahead or if you want to watch with us. We're very clear on that, and our group knows that too, so don't worry about any spoiler issues, but come in, chat to us, chat to the other viewers of Iron Fist and Defenders and the Daredevil and Luke Cage, and tell us what your favorite moments.
That's always great fun during the season while we're recording and being able to chat with the listeners. It's over on facebook.com/groups/Defenders TV Podcast.
Absolutely. The listeners, you're as much a part of this podcast as we are. We love delving into your thoughts, comments, and discussion points on the show.
And hearing your voicemails.
And hearing your voicemails. I think we've had 1 so far.
We've had 2. But what I want to hear on our first voicemail is someone correcting us on the pronunciations that we've done throughout this episode on Iron Fist.
Absolutely.
That's going to be a long voicemail.
Yeah, please send in
John,
the correct...
you should pronounce Kunlun is.
Exactly. Please send in the correct pronunciations so that we can get those right. I mean, it's just the way I've been saying them as I've read the comics for ages. And that's the thing. They probably are about 100% off the right track at this stage. We're all geared up for Iron Fist, and we will be back on the 17th of March.
St. Patrick's Day.
St. Patrick's Day. Glass of Guinness.
St. Iron Fist Day.
St. Iron Fist Day, with a glass of, not a glass, a pint of Guinness, I should say. Mm-hmm. And of course, it is the same day as Iron Fist dropping worldwide on Netflix at 8 a.m. in the morning.
GMT, remember. So
Greenwich Mean Time. Yeah, absolutely. Greenwich Mean Time.
Yeah.
So please come and join us for that. And then, of course, we will release an episode every Tuesday and Friday with new reviews of Iron Fist Season 1. And, of course, we will be holding back, and we will not be spoiling ourselves by going through the full 13 episodes. If you've listened to our Luke Cage, Daredevil, and Jessica Jones podcast, you'll know that we hang on back. We are put through torture by Derek, and we are not allowed to watch ahead, even though the excitement is way too much and we want to. Derek.
Hey, that's the way these things work. Thank you so much for joining us, listeners. We're really looking forward to getting back to celebrate St. Danny's Day, or raise a glass to Danny Boy on St. Patrick's Day. Looking forward to that on the March 17th. Come join us at 8 a.m. When we'll have our review ready to go.
Definitely. I have nothing more to say, but bring on the fist.
Absolutely. Cue innuendo. We will be back with the fist.
Innuendos, I think. Goodbye, boys. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll talk to you again soon.
See you now. Bye.
See you on the 17th.
Bye. And of course, you can find us at, it's so long since I've done it, I have forgotten where we are located. We are physically located in Dublin, Ireland, but of course,
Marvel was so good at their marketing at the time, and so good at tapping into what was going on in the society, so they could get new. All right.
Run, Chris, run.
Just catch the. Come on. Okay. It's gone.
I've said that.
Already mentioned it. Yeah.
It's just the new Avengers, that's all.
Cool.
And then finally, I'll start that again. And then finally, there's the new Avengers, obviously, where we have him coming.
Since you started again, you can start again and take it. You're obviously there. Or one word we're not allowed to say.
Yeah.
And then, of course, there's the new Avengers series where.
Of course, it's just an antonym or synonym of obviously.
And then we have New Avengers.
Thanks for listening to Defenders TV Podcast, a TV podcast industries production. Our theme tune's provided by the wonderful Mississippi McDonald and the Cottonmouth Kings. If you want to help out the podcast and you've enjoyed listening to us, there's some really easy ways to do it. If you can share our episodes through your social media channels like Twitter, Reddit, Facebook, or Google+, that gets some extra listeners into us. If you want to leave us a review on iTunes or a rating, just leave a 5-star rating, click the button, or go to iTunes through defenderstvpodcast.com/iTunes. We'll take you straight to our page and leave us a review or a rating there. That always helps out independent podcasts. And also, as always, we love to hear your feedback about the shows. Interaction with our audience is what we really, really love. So you can send us feedback to feedback@defenderstvpodcast.com. Thanks so much for listening, and we'll talk to you next time.